Okay, colleagues, we'll make a start, and I'll just say before we start, this is the third of 3 sessions, and we'll be organising one in Shannon next week as well, Shannon College as well. I'm going to run you through the scheme as best I can. I'm joined here by the Vice President of Quality and Diversity, Professor Anne Scott, who may have a better answer or be more au fait with one or two parts of the scheme than I am, and also Academic Secretary Caroline Loughnane here, who likewise has been inside, outside, up ways, down ways, and back to front with the documentation. So again, Caroline might be quicker to an answer on some of the points than I am. So we'll save the Q&A for the very end. I'd like to go through the slides first. Just to say that this is an information session, but anything that I say is not the final word. If there's a conflict with the documentation, it's the documentation that is the final word. So I'll do my best not to get anything wrong, but if you do spot any conflict there, it's the documentation that is the final word, okay? So, Promotion Scheme 2017, this is an introduction. The last scheme was 3 years ago, 13-14. On that occasion, we had 104 applications, and of those, 31 people were promoted, 28 in the first instance, 3 on appeal. This scheme is an evolution of the 2013-14 scheme. It is assessment by academic peers in a peer review process, and that is something that is pretty well unique to this university in that those doing the assessment are entirely the academic peers. The scheme is comparative, so there's a fixed number of places, and I'll come to that, with a rank ordering of candidates. Inputs into the 2017 scheme, we had recommendations from the Senior Lecturers Promotions Board in 2013, recommendations of the Appeal Board, feedback from successful and unsuccessful candidates, external expert gender impact assessment of the 2017 scheme, and that was 2 external experts at Oxford Brookes University. A gender impact assessment of the 2017 scheme by the Vice President of Quality and Diversity, Professor Scott, and by the Quality Manager, Aoife Cook. It's been approved by UMT Academic Council and Údarás na Hallscoile, and we have a couple of final bits of the documentation to bring to Údarás tomorrow. And the scheme has also been reviewed by legal experts, including the method of application of the gender quota, because we are simply absolutely determined that we make that as legally watertight as we can, and therefore as legally defensible as we can. So, key differences between the 2013-14 scheme and this scheme are that on this occasion we have in effect 2 parallel schemes, one for lecturers, one for lecturer stroke lecturer B, one for lecturer A stroke university teacher. Okay? We've streamlined the process by removing the interview stage. We've removed the external assessor reports. We've got 2 external advisors added to the board as process overseers. And that will include such issues as looking for consistency in marking and so on. Greater external representation on the appeals board. There are strict word and page limits in the relevant boxes and the total number of pages and so on. The application form will be fully online. There will be information sessions for prospective applicants, and this is the third of 4 in total. And then the recommendations of the board will be ratified by Údarás na Hallscoile, and that is based then on the number of places to be that is being set out in advance, rather than following the assessment of the panel, as to some extent happened last time. So, eligibility. If you have a contract type A or university teacher contract, that's lecturers above the bar and university teachers grade 2, whether permanent, full-time or part-time, provided they've been confirmed in post. Eligibility contract type B, or what was previously simply lecturer, lecturers above the bar, and the same thing, whether permanent, full-time or part-time, provided they have been confirmed in post. The date of eligibility is 31st of December 2016, which is the census date for our returns to the CAO. So it's one that we do as accurately as possible, and that is the date that we will then use for eligibility. The topics in the conversation session, the information session, you can see there. So the criteria, the weightings, the additional material, Information session date, so this is the third of 3 on this campus, and then the draft time scale. We hope to open in March 2017 with a closing date on May 2017, and then it'll be for the panel to do the work as effectively and efficiently as possible. We don't want to set an absolute deadline at this stage. Better to do the work right than to do it quickly. I will mention one thing that impacts on the timescale potentially, and that is that SIP2 and IFOT have notified the university that they will be in dispute with us if we open the scheme. They have referred it to the WRC and asked for a meeting. We have also written to the WRC asking for a meeting as early as possible to try and get a resolution to this so that we can move forward with the scheme. The objective of the academic promotion scheme is competitive, and it is to promote on the basis of comparative performance. This is assessed in accordance with criteria which reflect the university's educational mission. And they are, in many ways, the kind of generic criteria that you get in any promotion scheme anywhere. So it takes into account 3 broad areas. That is really quite standard. Learning, teaching, and assessment is one. Research and scholarly standing is another. And then contribution to the school, college, university, and community is another. A minimum score of 40% is required in each of the 3 areas, with higher achievement in at least 2. And promotion is based on a fixed number of promotional places and a rank ordering of candidates based on assessment of applications. And the number of places this time will be 32. Okay? So a minimum of 32. But that 32 will only be exceeded if the gender quota needs to kick in. And I will come back to that. So learning, teaching, and assessment. In this category, you'll be assessed under the following 6 areas if you apply: teaching experience and responsibilities, teaching skill and approach, curriculum and course design, development, student support and facilitation, innovation and leadership, professional development, and scholarship. Teaching experience and responsibilities. Evidence in this category should be submitted by outlining contact hours for a 3-year period. Now, if you've had a sabbatical, or if you've had any other kind of leave during the past 3 years, then simply go back 1 further year to get your 3 years of evidence. Okay? That's the way to approach that. Submitting a teaching portfolio. Standard template and guidelines for the construction of the portfolios are on the KELT website. And this presentation is up on our website as well, isn't it? On the SL Promotions website. So you can get that link in there as well. Okay, and that is to include a brief statement of teaching philosophy. Teaching skill and approach demonstrates high quality of teaching backed up by mandatory evidence from independent student evaluation supported by peer review, external examiner reports, or other techniques. If for whatever reason, be it sabbatical, whatever, you're unable to go independent student feedback due to documented leave, you may submit other forms of student feedback, and you should notify my office, and it's that email address, slpromotions@nuigalway.ie. Please notify my office in advance of applying. Third thing then, curriculum course design development, experience in the review and revision of existing programs and modules, as well as the design of new modules and programs. Student support and facilitation, okay, including dealing with particular needs, mentoring, supervision, providing advice, support of students on placement and fieldwork, innovation and leadership, identification of opportunities for the development of new programs, review of existing course offerings, willingness to experiment and innovate with teaching and assessment approaches, for example, and 6, professional development and scholarship. And you should show achievement in as many areas as possible, backed up by appropriate evidence. In terms of independent student feedback, it's being run by an independent external agency. It is run in semesters 1 and 2 of the academic year 2016-17, and emails went out to all staff noting that the deadline for applying for semester 2 was the 24th of February, i.e. last Friday, but that went out as an all staff email well in advance. Candidates are asked to submit details of all available modules. External agency randomly selects 2 to 3 modules per applicant. A random sample of students is selected. They're sent an electronic survey to complete. The external agency will collate results and send them to the applicants for review. The feedback reports will be sent to the SL board by the external agency. You don't need to include them in your application. Okay? You will get the opportunity to comment on the results of your independent student feedback in your teaching portfolio. And, you know, whatever you think of the feedback, you should take that opportunity. Please note that there are various measures in place there to avoid survey fatigue, for example. So on modules that are taught in teams, only one lecturer's teaching will be surveyed per module. You don't have the option of selecting which modules you prefer to have surveyed, so everybody's being treated equally in that regard. If you have concerns about feedback given or response rates, address them in your commentary in the teaching portfolio, and the board will take that into consideration. Bear in mind the board is 16 of your peers. Well, 8 of your peers, depending which half of the house you're going to be in. So they'd be well familiar with this. And just reiterating that point, if you're unable to go feedback due to documented leave, sabbatical, maternity, carer's leave, any other kind of leave, then you're required to include the outcomes of feedback processes conducted by yourself or otherwise independently conducted with your teaching portfolio, and advise my office of your intention to do this. You're required to provide a copy of your approved teaching schedule for the 3 academic years prior to the year in which the application is being made. As I say, if you've had one of those 3 years out, then go back simply an extra year to include 3 years of information. All your teaching duties, including supervision of minor dissertations, should be set out in this section, but notice that major dissertations, i.e. PhDs, research masters, should be included in the research section. Okay? And there's a key point there that we will come back to about not duplicating material in the application. For senior lecturer contract A, your research and scholarly standing, and this is under the overarching heading research and scholarly standing, your research and scholarly standing are understood to refer to research and other forms of scholarship associated with research-informed teaching and with keeping up to date with developments in your discipline and or research as traditionally conceived in the discipline. And I'm well aware that some staff who had a university teacher contract, now lecturer A, have in fact developed a research profile that is indistinguishable from a lecturer B. And that absolutely fits in here, but it's not expected. Okay? It's not expected. It's about research and other forms of scholarship associated with research-informed teaching and keeping up to date with developments in your discipline. That is the core part of that. If your profile as a lecturer A also extends into research as traditionally understood, then that belongs in there as well. Senior lecturer contract B, on the other hand, it's not about scholarship and keeping up to date with developments in your discipline. It is research as traditionally conceived in your discipline, including publications, PhD supervision, your research and scholarly profile, research funding, research impact. And the intention of this section is to allow you to demonstrate your achievements across the whole range of that. Publications, see Appendix 2 of the scheme for the details of the types of publications to be included. You're asked to list your publications by category. Applicants, if you're in the Contract B scheme and Contract A scheme, you're asked to list all publications, not by category. Okay, is that clear? So there's a set of categories if you're applying under Lecturer Contract B. If Lecturer Contract A, then just list all publications. And please note the form includes only a list of your publications. You must include your IRIS profile to provide full details of the publications. It's the IRIS profile that will be read by the reviewers. Now, I'm well aware that some IRIS profiles have got duplicate entries or don't have page numbers or whatever. It's up to you to tidy that up and present it in the best possible way. But it's the IRIS profile that the reviewers will look at. And then research and scholarly standing, the other. So postgraduate research students, list all of the postgraduate research students you've got, indicating whether already complete or expected completion. Okay, but do indicate clearly which it is. Research funding obtained by you, and I think we clarified that IRC scholarships are listed as research funding against the supervisor's name, didn't we? IRC scholarships are listed as research funding against the supervisor's name. So if you've had PhD studentships from the IRC, whatever, then that is research funding obtained by you, in effect. Research and scholarly standing profile, contributions to postgraduate research, research impact, research resources and other professional circumstances.
Sorry, what about Hardiman and College of Science? That wouldn't count. Only IRC.
No, Hardiman would count as well. Well, that's internal funding though, isn't it? It's internal funding, yeah. Okay. So the IRIS profile, you must include an up-to-date IRIS profile. It's the only source from which the board will review your publications. So don't waste a lot of space in your other 30 pages listing a load of publications, okay? Or listing them twice, or it's the IRIS will be the source. It must be exported from your IRIS profile. It can be a Microsoft Word, an Excel, or a PDF. It doesn't really matter, okay? Any of those that you think does justice to the presentation of your list of publications. Please ensure that it's up to date, full list, and that publications are not duplicated. Contribution to school, college, university, and community. In this category, applicants are asked to describe contributions they've made to school, college, university, their profession, and or to wider society. Community in this context encompasses wider society, professional organizations, the academic and disciplinary community, language and culture, civic organizations and NGOs, and the broader educational domain. To demonstrate excellence in this category, applicants will be expected to demonstrate significant contribution and or leadership as per the application. Okay? So, and I think someone asked about, discipline. If it's external to the university, then it's community. So your professional discipline, nationally, internationally, whatever. Okay? If it's internal to the university, then discipline is understood as it's probably in school. Okay? Candidates will be asked to provide details about individual profile across those 4 areas. And then in terms of impact and influence, 2 significant case studies demonstrating your contribution are requested here. 2 significant case studies. Okay? Please note, you should highlight your own role in the project. You should not repeat examples used elsewhere in the application. The key focus of the contribution section is on the following: what was involved, why it was important, your specific role and the impact you had, and then the outcomes. And some sample case studies are up there, okay? And I'll say what I said in the last meeting. An application form for promotion is not the place to be modest. There's plenty of documented evidence all over the world that women, when they're applying for things, often bury themselves in the team, whereas men often bury the team. All right? So don't bury yourself in the team. Highlight what your contribution was, whether it was leader, whether it was whatever. Okay? If it is a team effort, highlight your own role in that. Don't bury it away. And by the same token, those of you who might be inclined are from the gender that sometimes buries the team, don't bury the team either. Highlight your own role, and if it was a team effort, make clear that your role was part of a team effort. But make sure you highlight your own role within that team effort. And in the final sections of the application, you're asked for any additional information, any further information that you think may be relevant to your application, maximum 500 words. And you're required to provide names of 3 referees, 1 internal, 2 external. And I mean, there are free FAQs up on the website. I'm not sure if this particular one is there, but it was one that came as part of the consultation last month. And yes, it can be an emeritus professor or whatever as your referee. Okay? That's not a problem. Now, the weightings. So senior lecturer contract A. Basically, that is the default setting. Unless you indicate otherwise, That is the default setting for lecture contract type A. 200 marks for teaching, 50 for research, 50 for contribution. If you feel that you've been particularly strong on either research or contribution, and that you would benefit from shifting some of the marks, then you can take 50 out of teaching and put it into either research or contribution, but in a block of 50. You can't split it up and add 20 here and 30 there or anything like that. Okay? If you indicate no preference at all in this regard, then that is the default that will apply. For lecture contract type B, 100, 100, 100 are the weightings that will apply as the default if you indicate nothing to the contrary. You can, however, take 30 out of any one of those three and put it 30 marks out and put it into any one of the other two. Okay? Which is what was possible last time. The lecture A is slightly different than last time. This is, it was fixed last time. This is effectively the same principle that applied last time. Please note, you must indicate in the application form your intention of reallocating marks from teaching to research or contribution, or the intention of keeping the default allocations of marks. In the absence of any indication, the default will apply. And then, making the point that was made earlier, the minimum threshold for promotion requires accomplishment in 2 of the 3 areas with a score of 40% in the 3rd area as a minimum requirement. Weightings are recorded only for use in this scheme and are exclusive to this process. They don't indicate anything in terms of what your workload allocation might be or anything like that beyond this scheme. It's purely for this scheme. That's the checklist. Completed application form, up-to-date IRIS profile, teaching portfolio, names of 3 referees. The total page limit for supporting documents is 30 pages, which doesn't include the application form. The 30 pages includes your teaching portfolio, which may not exceed 8 pages, plus a maximum of 15 additional pages and appendices, your IRIS profile, and any additional information that you may feel you want to submit and still have room for, such as a short CV, but that's optional. Anything beyond page 30 will not be considered by the board. If you submit 35 pages, pages 31 to 35 will be treated as if they simply aren't there. Okay? And don't put links to websites in your application form, which is a good way of getting additional pages in without them actually being in the application. They will be ignored, absolutely ignored by the board. Okay? 3 referees, and note that they will be asked to comment on your performance in all 3 activities insofar as they're able to, teaching, research, and contribution. And it may well be that one of your referees only knows you in a research context and can only comment in that regard. So be it. It's up to you to choose your referees wisely. Now, the head of school form, a copy of the candidate's application form will be sent to the relevant head of school, who will be asked to complete the head of school form. If the head of school has held that position for only 6 months or less, the applicant may choose to have either the previous head of school or the current head of school complete the form. And a number of heads of school have changed over the last few months. That is something you will have an option on. But you must indicate then which head of school it should be, but it's only if the head of school has changed within the last 6 months when we open the scheme. Okay? If the head of school is an applicant, the form will be sent to the relevant dean of college for completion. No scores attached to the head of school's form. It is used by the board to confirm information and evaluations. And we've got a couple of proposals in connection with the head of school form, following feedback and looking at best practice that we're going to take to the governing authority tomorrow to get sign-off. So I don't want to say anything about those yet until they've been discussed and approved there, hopefully. Okay. In terms of the promotions board, the board consists of 20 members. The president and I are ex officio members. We coordinate the process. We've got nothing to do with assessing anybody, nothing to do with even finding out who's applied. Okay. There are 2 external advisors to the board. They are senior academics from outside the university whose role is to provide oversight to the process, and they will read all applications, but they won't be asked to score them. but they will be looking for consistency of approach by the board. One is from elsewhere in the Republic, and the other is from across the water. One is on the STEM side, the other is on the arts side. Okay? And then 16 members of the board are internal academic peers from a broad range of disciplines. They're responsible for assessing all the applications. They have undertaken unconscious bias training and gender equality training. And we have on the ABL side 4 men and 4 women, and on the STEM side 4 men and 4 women as well. The promotional pool. So the governing authority has approved a fixed number of 32 promotional places for this promotion round. Comparative HEA data for 7 universities was used to determine the appropriate number of places. So the national average percentage of staff at senior lecturer level is 21.5%, according to the most recent comparative stats that we have nationally. At NUI Galway, it's 16.4. This will bring us into line with the sector. 32 promotional places takes us up to actually 21.3, but we are 1% ahead of the national average in terms of the percentage of professors, whether established or personal, that we have. So overall, we would be very slightly ahead of the national average in terms of the percentage of staff that are above the grade of lecturer when we promote 32 people. Places will be allocated between lecturer A and B in proportion to the eligible pool. And we've done the calculation there, and again, we need to take this to governing authority tomorrow for approval. And allocated between arts, business and law and science, engineering, medicine constituencies in proportion to the eligible pool. In terms of lecturer A-B, roughly 1/8 of the eligible pool is lecturer A. Therefore, we would expect 1/8 of the available places to be at lecturer A. Okay. Gender quotas. In line with the recommendations of the University's Gender Equality Task Force adopted by Udderus and Hullskull in May 2016, we will implement gender quotas for senior lecturer promotion, moving to a flexible cascade model over 2 rounds. A quota of 40% shall be applied in this round of promotions. This quota will be applied across the total number of all promotions made. And Appendix 7, which again we are taking to governing authority tomorrow, following extensive legal consultation for approval, will be the guiding document in that regard. And just to make clear, the 40% only applies to women. Okay? Because the imbalance that's being addressed is the underrepresentation of women. So if for example, 70% of the places in the initial calculation of the 32 are taken by men, then the gender quota application will kick in order to promote the number of women needed to get up to the 40% of the original 32, which is 13, by the way, 13 of the 32. If, on the other hand, 70% of those promoted in the first count were women, well, that's the result. Okay? The recommendations of the Promotions Board will be ratified by governing authority. Candidates will be informed by me of the decisions of Udderus and the Hullskull. The promotions will take effect from the 1st of the month following the date of approval by Udderus. All candidates will receive a concise feedback report from the Promotions Board, and then the relevant head of school, or if the applicant is the head of school, the relevant dean, will meet with unsuccessful candidates to prepare a development plan based on the feedback received. And those who are successful will probably find the Vice President, Innovation and Performance breathing down their necks to make sure that they seriously think about what it is they're now going to deliver, having been promoted to SL. That's simply the information on the sessions. This is the last of them. There was a general session as well last Thursday on making a good application. Again, that was widely advertised and circulated. And that's a tentative timeline. Very much depends on whether we can get a resolution at the WRC. But we would like to open the scheme in March. And give people 6 to 8 weeks then to apply. Okay? We've done, again, the benchmarking nationally, and 6 weeks is a normal opening window for this kind of thing. and then assessment of the board. So it might well go into September, October before we get the results. We want the board to do the work well rather than quickly.